The year was 1865, and America was still healing from the Civil War. Back east, people rebuilt lives torn apart by years of fighting. But out west, the land was wild and free, full of hope for those brave enough to take it. Sarah and William were two such dreamers. The Oregon Trail was their road to a fresh start, far from the pain and loss of war. But the frontier was harsh and had no room for dreams or hope. As their wagon rolled across endless plains and rocky mountains, they thought they could handle anything. Then they reached a lonely trading post, a place meant for rest and supplies. Instead, it became the end of everything Sarah knew. They arrived at the trading post at sunset. It was the kind of place that looked like it wouldn't last, but had been there long enough for the wood to turn gray. A few settlers walked around, watching them carefully. The Cheyenne were camped nearby, watching quietly too. Sarah pulled her shawl closer. She didn't know much about the Cheyenne. Only what people whispered enough to make her nervous. Inside the trading post, the air was thick with smoke and doubt. Men leaned on the bar, their voices low and sharp. Anger built quickly, a harsh word here, an angry look there. Then came the sound of a rifle being loaded. "Get out of here," someone shouted. A Cheyenne man stepped forward, his hands raised in peace, but it was too late. The first shot rang out, and then chaos broke loose. Guns flashed, men yelled, and Sarah dove for cover as the room filled with smoke and screams. She saw William rush toward her, but before he could reach her, he fell to the ground, holding his chest. "No!" Sarah screamed, crawling toward him through the fight. She held his head in her hands as he fought for breath. His eyes met hers for one painful moment before they closed forever. She couldn't stay, not here, where every inch of ground was soaked with sadness. With William's blood still on her hands, she gathered what little she could carry and walked out into the wilderness. The wilderness showed no mercy. Sarah faced her first real test just days after leaving the trading post. A storm came without warning, wind howling through trees and snow blinding her path. She stumbled over roots and rocks, fighting to stay standing. Just as she thought she couldn't go on, she found him, a figure slumped against a tree, blood staining the earth beneath him. He was Cheyenne. Her heart pounded as fear and instinct fought within her. Everything she'd been told said to run, but something made her stay. "Can you hear me?" she asked, her voice shaking. His eyes opened, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Then he spoke in a language she didn't know. But his tone wasn't threatening. It was asking for help. Sarah worked quickly, tearing strips from her dress to bandage his wounds. When she was done, he gave a small nod of thanks. That was the beginning. Days later, their path brought them to a river swollen from the recent storm. The icy water churned wildly, and the sound of the rapids filled Sarah with fear. "We can't cross this," she said, her voice shaking. Storm Eagle didn't answer. He simply pointed to the far bank, his face calm but firm. With no other choice, they tied their supplies to a makeshift raft and prepared to wade into the water. The current was stronger than Sarah expected. Halfway across, she lost her footing and fell. The water dragged her downstream. Storm Eagle was there instantly. He grabbed her arm and pulled her upright, his strength holding her steady against the current. Together they made it to the other side, falling onto the muddy bank, soaked and shivering. "I thought I was done for," Sarah admitted. Storm Eagle's lips curved in the smallest of smiles. "Strong," he said simply, tapping his chest. "Here." Later, walking through thick woods, a new danger appeared. The sound of breaking branches made Sarah freeze. She turned slowly to see a massive bear walking into their path, its eyes locked on them. "Don't move," Storm Eagle whispered. He slowly reached for his bow, fitting an arrow with skilled hands. The bear let out a low growl, stepping closer. Storm Eagle released the arrow. The sharp sound of the bowstring broke the silence. The arrow hit the bear's shoulder, but instead of running away, it roared in anger and charged. Storm Eagle shouted something in his language, grabbing Sarah's arm and pulling her behind a tree. The bear clawed at the trunk, wood chips flying. Storm Eagle shot another arrow, this one hitting its chest. The bear stumbled, letting out a final roar before falling to the ground. Sarah's knees gave out as the fear left her. "Is this what life out here is like?" she asked, her voice shaking. Storm Eagle looked at her, his face calm. "Yes," he said simply. Days later, the air grew colder and the snow fell harder. By sunset, the sky had turned dark gray and the wind began to howl. Storm Eagle motioned for Sarah to stop, pointing to a group of trees. "We can't keep going, can we?" Sarah asked. Storm Eagle nodded and began gathering branches. Together they worked to build a shelter, using fabric from their supplies to block the worst of the storm. The wind cut through the cracks like a blade, and the cold seeped into their bones. Inside the small shelter, they sat close together. Sarah's teeth chattered as she tried to wrap her shawl tighter. Storm Eagle removed his fur-lined cloak and put it over her. "No," she protested. "You'll freeze." Storm Eagle shook his head. "Strong," he said simply, tapping his chest. Sarah stared at him, her eyes filling with tears. "You keep saying that," she whispered. "But I'm not. I'm not strong." Storm Eagle met her gaze, his voice low and steady as he replied in his language. She didn't understand the words, but the way he spoke made her believe him. For the first time in weeks, she felt a spark of warmth, not just from the cloak, but from the quiet strength he shared with her. The bandits came at sunset, 3 rough-looking men, armed and desperate. Storm Eagle had spotted their tracks hours earlier, leading Sarah deeper into the woods. But the men wouldn't give up. "Hand over what you've got," the leader sneered, his gun aimed at Storm Eagle. "And maybe we'll let you live." Sarah's hands shook as she stepped forward. "We don't have anything worth taking." The man laughed. "That's where you're wrong, sweetheart." Before she could respond, Storm Eagle jumped forward, knocking the gun aside. The crack of the shot echoed through the trees as the 2 men fought. Another bandit charged toward Sarah, but she swung a heavy branch, catching him across the jaw. He fell to the ground, cursing. The fight ended quickly. Storm Eagle stood over the leader, his knife at the man's throat. His voice was calm but deadly as he spoke in his language. The meaning was clear: leave or you won't walk away. The men scrambled to their feet and disappeared into the woods. Sarah managed a shaky smile. "I never thought I'd stand up to a man like that," she admitted. "William would have been proud of me, I think." The time came for Sarah to move on. Standing at the edge of the forest, she hesitated. "I don't want to leave," she whispered, her voice breaking. Storm Eagle didn't reply with words. Instead, he placed a hand over her heart, then his own, a silent promise that their bond would remain. As she turned to leave, tears blurred her vision, but she didn't stop. She wasn't the same woman who had started this journey. She was stronger now, not just because she had survived, but because of the man who had walked with her through the wilderness. The trail west was never easy. It was a place where dreams were tested, where the land itself seemed to challenge those brave enough to cross it. For Sarah, the journey wasn't just about reaching a new home, it was about finding the strength she didn't know she had. Out there in the wilderness, she lost everything she thought she couldn't live without. But she gained something far greater: toughness, trust, and a bond that went beyond the world's expectations. Storm Eagle wasn't supposed to be an ally, yet together they faced the harsh frontier, building a connection based on survival and respect. Their story reminds us that even in the hardest places, even when everything seems against us, there's something inside us that refuses to give up. And sometimes it's the people we least expect who help us find that strength. Sarah's journey didn't end when she left those mountains. With every step she took toward a new life, she carried the lessons of survival and trust that she had learned in the snow, the storms, and the silence of the wilderness. So what do we learn from this tale? Maybe it's this: the frontier wasn't just a place, it was a test of will. And for those who dared to face it, the rewards weren't just land or riches, but the unshakable knowledge that they had endured. They had survived. Stories like this of courage, trust, and survival remind us of the strength of the human spirit and deserve to be remembered.